Welcome to The Secret Witch Show, the podcast providing a safe and alchemical altar space of conversations which help powerful women escape a half-hearted, spiritless society and rediscover the freedom of living a wildly magical life. Every other week, we explore how to cast aside the wounds of shame, guilt, and fear connected with fully being yourself, so you can grant yourself permission to stop hiding, ground soulfully back into your body, illuminate your whole soul desires, tend your soul, rediscover and reclaim your powerful gifts, express your magic, and manifest your wildest alchemy. There's no better place to become who your heart longs to be. This is where we will guide you into liberation. I'm your host, Nicole Barton, and I'm so excited to dive in. Welcome beauties. I am so delighted to be bringing you another magical episode today. If you are listening to this, it's likely that you are a woman who identifies on some level with being what I would call a secret witch. You might have some resistance to it, but aka that's a woman who has a sense that you're here to be magical, perhaps the deeper purpose as a healer, yet may also feel the fear of admitting that. So you hide this part of yourself, and there's lots of different fears that can occur in that kind of becoming of a healer journey. If that is you, and if you loved listening to this podcast episode, which I guess you'll only know by the end, then I suspect you'll really enjoy receiving our lunar newsletter, which is an extension of all the truth, magic and healing gold that I share in this episode and more. I am a writer as well as a soul guide, and this has always been a deep aspect of me, like this kind of creative, like poetic, like writer kind of archetype of me, I guess you could call it. And so if you are a reader, you might also like to be subscribed so that you can receive the downloads that I send. But also because our team each month gathers a Lunar News beautiful download full of all of our kind of juicy gems for the month, once a month at full moon. There are a few other reasons to subscribe, in that you'll receive our starter pack, which for women who are feeling that opening to being a healer, who are maybe feeling all the fear and want to just like take it at their own pace, it offers all the tender first steps into opening to your gifts as a healer that you can begin to work with yourself at home. If that feels like a tavern of gold, which is how our work has been described as well at times, and you'd like to keep hearing what I have to share around that journey of becoming a healer, and by the way, there's no pressure or hard feelings if that doesn't feel aligned either, but if it does, you can subscribe at nicolebarton.co.uk/subscribe. On The Secret Witch Show today, though, I am diving into one of the common symptoms that shows up for women who have come here with magical gifts, the topic of burnout. Burnout is something that many sensitive women experience, and so I share today my own point of view and journey with this, explaining my radical worldview that whilst we judge ourselves for often not being able to keep up when we're burned out, burnout is really a deeper call into our magic and gifts, which sounds quite strange to say, but I'll explore more in the episode. In today's episode, I'll explore why that is, how we've been conditioned to shame ourselves for what's just the sensitive constitution we were born with, and how burnout is really a sign that there's some healing to do of our wounded healer. I explore how, contrary to what we've been taught, our wounds become portals to our deepest gifts. And I offer some enquiry about burnout as well to help guide you in deeper self-illumination. Let's dive in. Welcome, secretly magical ones, to this episode about burnout. And I have to say, I am creating this episode with deep tenderness. I've got myself wrapped in my gorgeous, I call it my wolf blanket, which is rather apt, as I think I'm serving she-wolf as this episode goes out, or coming to the end of the journey. But as it is, I'm recording the episode on just after the eclipse. And during Mercury retrograde. So it's fair to say that this week there have been lots of communications challenges. And so the irony or synchronicity, if you want to be more magical, is that, of course, I'm recording an episode about burnout being a portal to connecting with our magic and gifts, and also feeling pretty exhausted, which is almost perfect. I usually do invoke what I'm talking about. It gives me a nice reminder of what I've journeyed with. And the thing I want to share before we dive in is also that there's often this sense with guides or healers or teachers or, whatever, of like thinking that they should be perfect, they should be healed. And so I just wanted to caveat this episode with the sharing of like, actually, right now, I am feeling quite exhausted. And there's this sense of like, my work is not done. And I think that's so, so important, particularly when we're talking about self-healing, because really what I'm here to help women with is to help them heal themselves. And although my work is not done, and I'm saying, don't put me on a pedestal, and I do still come up against the same kind of challenges and patterns, there is like a deep level of change, transformation, healing in how I've learned to respond differently to the challenges that our soul comes here to learn how to navigate. That'll make more sense as we dive into the episode, but what I'm going to say to that is, at one point, if I was feeling exhausted and burned out, I would have either just pushed and forced through, trying to get everything possibly done, or swung to the opposite end of the wounding pole around burnout and completely done nothing. And this has been a pattern that has kind of stayed with me. I want to talk more about my journey with burnout, but stayed with me throughout life, and it happened very early on. I'm not going to share more about that just yet. I'm going to dive into that a little bit later. But what I will say is that where once I would have just pushed and forced through my day, it felt really deeply soul aligned for me to create this episode, particularly with what's the material for liberation that's coming up for me right now. By that I mean the experiences I'm having with eclipse, Mercury retrograde, of feeling exhausted, and the irony or synchronicity of recording an episode about burnout. Like, it feels like this is exactly what I'm meant to be experiencing in order to be able to share my magic, which is very, really meta for what we're talking about. It's like burnout being the exact portal to connect to me with my magic and gifts. It's like I'm in that experience and sharing it and sharing how I've navigated it, which is being a gift and a magical gift for others. So I've just realised that as I was speaking, that's actually a very good example of exactly what we're here to talk about. So it is literally almost perfect. So the difference between where once I would have just pushed and forced through my whole day, or just given up and done nothing and not recorded it at all, is that what happened was I checked in with my boundaries, I checked in with my body, and was able to really feel into, like, is this aligned for me to create today? And the answer was yes, like my body really wanted to create this juicy episode today. And there were things that I needed in order to be able to create that. So I dropped things. I went out, other things that weren't a priority to me. I went out for a wild wander and connected to nature. And then I came in, I had a hot chocolate, I had a bath, and I've wrapped myself in this beautiful wolf blanket. And this is like me really nurturing myself and still being able to take the aligned action. Where once I would have just forced my way through everything that I'd already got planned and not dropped anything. I wouldn't have gone out for a walk. I wouldn't have had a bath. I'd have just like push, keep going. Or swung to the opposite end of the kind of wounding and just rejected all of it and be like, okay, I'm too exhausted. I'm going to do nothing. And so I guess I'm sharing that because I've had this like huge journey. If there's one theme out of anything, there's like the most potent thing that I have experienced in my life is burnout. Like, I've had deep experiences of wounding with burnout. And so I'm starting with that share, and I'm going to share more about my own journey. But I think what I want to share is that burnout is like such a common symptom in our society. So whether you're magical, like whether you class yourself as a witch, whether you class yourself as a healer, whatever it is, or aspiring healer, whether you're just a sensitive woman, however you want to label yourself, I think it's safe to say that burnout has become this kind of collective symptom that most of society experiences, because of that kind of deep disconnect from who we are, like this deep sense of like constantly having to rush, constantly fit into a society that doesn't really suit anybody, let alone sensitive ones. But for us sensitive ones especially, is something that is deeply, deeply like part of our journeys. Like for us sensitive, empathetic, kind of like women who are feeling a call to the woo, to being a healer, teacher, or guide, like those women, us, especially, we are going to be called by burnout. It's something that I see so often. And if you're listening to this, it's likely that you're a woman who is feeling a call to the woo, to being a healer, teacher, or guide, to connecting with your magic and gifts, and experiencing that burnout. And often we can feel so isolated when we're in that experience of burnout, like we're the only ones. I remember feeling like, why am I so sensitive that I just can't do what everybody else does? Like, why can I not just keep up with life? Why is it me that's sitting here in the same four walls? This is when I was really, really burnt out to the point I couldn't walk. Why am I not able to walk? Like, I'm in a wheelchair. I'm going to talk more about that. But like, why am I in a wheelchair trying to do half of what everybody else can do, like, and absolutely exhausted? And so I want to caveat the whole episode with the fact that we are human, and I have been to the depths of burnout. So whatever I'm going to talk about today, about it being a portal to connecting with our magic and gifts, that does not take away from the human experience we have with burnout. Like, it sucks. So first and foremost, it sucks, and that's welcome. So the people who tend to arrive here are typically women who are busy, so maybe you're like the talented businesswoman who has spent her life kind of fighting hard to rise in the corporate world, or maybe is creating a social enterprise or some kind of other kind of like big vision, or you've risen high up in a commercial capacity, and this is very much who I was, by the way. I used to be a brand manager, and secretly, your anxiety, overwhelm, body's hidden aches and pains, like you're being called to listen to your body. You're being called, in essence, to something wilder, something more soul-led, something more meaningful. But you have this sense of like this wild sensitivity, this difference, this can't have quite the amount of energy that everybody else has, which, by the way, is a myth. Like, energy is energy, and we have an abundance of it. It's just how we're using it. That's the thing. And so, like, there's this sense of like our difference as being sensitive ones is a burden rather than a gift, and we're going to talk more to that. The other women that I tend to see, so that was very much my journey. Like, I was very much like, I trained it in my MBA, I went and worked in business, and like it just wasn't something that was clearly a part of my soul plan. I mean, it was part of my soul plan to go there and learn the lessons of it, but it's clearly not my gift. It's not what I've come here for. Although, ironically, given that I now help healers create, express who they are in the world, and part of that involves like creating a business, you could argue actually maybe it was what I was here for. And there are kind of those clues through life that we see, okay, that makes sense why I did that now. Like, that actually is part of my gift. Business is part of my gift. And like, it wasn't being harnessed in the right way. It wasn't being harnessed in an aligned way, never mind the right way. And there's a difference between right and aligned. One feels like a judgment, one feels like a truth. But so that can be one kind of woman that shows up here. The other kind of women, and these again are aspects of me as well and my own journey, is the kind of brilliantly minded, successful professional. So this could be the creative genius, the psychologist, the teacher, someone who is interested in self-help, in healing therapies, in psychology, has also spent, very much similar to my own journey, a lifetime trying to fix ourselves. and particularly our sensitivity, and particularly burnout. And yet we have this kind of constant nudge that there is this more whole-souled way of healing and being as a sensitive woman in the world that we want to open to, and that maybe burnout is actually calling us to, which is what we're starting to speak to in this episode, and can be quite a radical paradigm shift or worldview change. Or there's also the busy mum who's burned out because she's holding everyone together, who maybe used to work in a professional career but just doesn't want to go back and has this sense of being here for something more meaningful, kind of this sense of like more magic, more gifts, but utterly exhausted from like holding everything, juggling all the balls. And also like there's this sense of fearing what people will think if we get started as well, fearing what people think of us when we are burned out, and like if we want to start magically healing that and healing others and helping, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And again, like this sense of like our sensitivity, our difference, always feeling like a burden to our family, to, you know, our the people in our jobs, or, you know, whoever it is. Maybe you're someone else as well who's listening. I'd love to hear if that's you. But either way, the kind of commonality between all of this is this sense of burnout. And it is such a symptom when women have either they arrive here and they're feeling burned out, or they arrive here and they've done quite a lot of healing on burnout, or both. And there's often this kind of deeply kind of like, if you're here listening to this, I suspect you're a sensitive woman who does feel burned out in some capacity. You possibly will be suffering some other kind of symptoms, maybe wound pains, migraines, mysterious autoimmune disorders, chronic fatigue, stomach issues, palpitations. And there's like this sense maybe that there's this hidden underlying deeper pattern that we're being called to slow down and heal ourselves. Also, there's this sense typically of like having created some kind of like external success, but that actually being quite exhausting, like quite frustrating. There's this sense of like having this drama-fueled, chaotic life, also feeling quite dull and lost and trapped in that life, and feeling that call to a life of more healing, magic, connection, and deeper meaning. There'll also be this kind of thread of feeling more than others. We're talking about the sensitivity that goes along with burnout often, like this being overwhelmed, easily overwhelmed by everything: noise, lights, odours, touch, electricity, people's energies, other worlds, like deep sensitivity to other worlds. And no matter how hard we kind of try and shove our feelings down, like, because that's also part of burnout, is we'll be suppressing our emotions, we'll be trying to be positive, but yet we will also often explode with fiery, anxious emotions, which not only do we feel ashamed of and guilty about, but we also then have a dip in our energy because of the amount of expression that has been suppressed and burst out. Like, it takes so much energy to suppress ourselves, but it also takes so much energy when that expression kind of bursts out. And there's absolutely no shame in this. Like, really, I'm describing me. Like, all of this is a description of a version of me. Also, there can be this temptation in brilliant, sensitive, burned out, magical women to numb ourselves from the pains of modern life with distractions. So work, TV, food, alcohol, drugs, social media, sex, anything, quick fixes is ultimately what we're talking about here. So there may also be this sense of trying to quick fix our burnout, like a pattern of having wanted to keep fixing our burnout as if there's something wrong with us. And I'm going to talk more about that as well. And also like predicting, a lot of over predicting with our brilliant minds. And that's a gift, by the way, your brilliant mind. But there's like this sense of like keep predicting what we need to fix next. And also another common thing for women who experience burnout and are being called into being healers is people pleasing. So, and this again is like my own experience. There's this sense of people pleasing, of rescuing, of having been running around living life for others, whether that's in business, work, or motherhood. Like ignoring our needs, feeling stressed, anxious, resentful, again, like creating another level of shame and guilt, which again takes so much energy to hold on to. Like there's this sense of not feeling good enough, constantly beating ourselves up. And also, going back to the piece about the brilliant mind, women who tend to burn out can also have like this brilliant depth to them that others don't. So there's like a seeing or a knowing of things that others miss, like a brilliance. And again, we shame that. Instead of seeing like, actually there's a gift in this, like there's a magic in this. And ultimately, that's who, that tends to be the woman who comes here experiencing burnout. Those are almost like the signs of like the burnout woman. And the thing about this is that what happens when we burn out is we do tend to shame ourselves for it. We're kind of conditioned in society to judge our burnout, to make ourselves wrong for it, to feel guilty, to feel inadequate, like I said earlier, for not being able to keep up in a culture that doesn't understand. And also then kind of feel the fear about, like, if we have started to be kinder on us, but kinder to ourselves and ease out and like, okay, we're going to take a slower pace, we can then also get stuck in that slower pace and feel like, okay, I really just can't go back into what I was doing before. Like I can't go back into like all the things I was creating, and largely that probably was a sign that wasn't aligned, and that's probably a good thing. But there's also often this sense of like, I just don't want to do anything anymore. Like I just want to lie here and do nothing. When the reality is burnout is actually connecting us back home to our magic and gifts. And I'm going to talk more about that because that probably feels quite radical. It's my point of view. It's my point of view based in my own experience of like, well, over 35 years of burnout, and like, or dipping in and out of burnout, let's say, because there's been some healing in that as well. But I believe, and when I've spoken on other podcasts about this, people have been like, that's quite a radical thing. And to me, it just doesn't feel that radical because it's something I've lived my whole life. So it's like normalized for me. But I believe that burnout is, for many, many women, particularly sensitive, magical women or secret witches, which is probably you if you're listening to the show, I believe that burnout is a portal of initiation. It is a deeper calling into our magic and gifts. That's been my own experience. I would not be even recording this podcast right now if I hadn't experienced burnout. Because, and I say this a lot, this is like something that I've really deeply seen and is also part of my soul map, is that our gift for the world is in our wound. So it's that kind of learning to navigate the burnout that helps us to go on and help others. That's a very generalized thing because we're not all here to help heal burnout, but it is always that there is gold to be found in our wounds. And so if you are experiencing burnout, there will be some gold to it. I know it may not feel like that. 100%. This is why the importance of like sharing. We are human, we experience burnout, we don't feel good about that. Like, we start to shame ourselves for it. It's like, what if we could just accept burnout as a symptom, as a sensation that our body is just letting us know something. Our body is just revealing something that is here for us to work with and see more about and actually reclaim an aspect of ourselves that has been lost. And so just going back to that kind of core piece here is like, I believe burnout is a portal of initiation. It's a deeper calling down into our magic and gifts. For women who are here to be healers, especially, we wouldn't be healers without having gone down into burnout first. This is our body telling us, no, this mundane life is not your purpose. It's going, look here in your body, you're sensitive, you're different. Many people will kind of bristle at that word because there's a sense like, I don't want to be different. I wrote a post the other day. It was like about belonging as a healer. And it's like, you were literally born here not to fit in. Like, you were born here not to fit in. And burnout is one of the ways that we don't fit in. So there's this sense of shame, this sense of like, oh God, people aren't going to approve of me because I'm just lazy, sitting on my ass over here on the sofa. This is me and my experience. And again, I'm going to share more about that, because sitting on our ass actually as a feminine woman is a gift. Like, it's part of the feminine expression, which is what's needed when we're feminine women here to be healers. And our body's just telling us no. This mundanity is not your purpose. You are different. You are magical. You are sensitive. And right now, your sensitive, magical kind of gifts and your sensitive, magical soul is literally a sign of your overburdened nervous system trying to fit yourself into this box. Burnout is a sign of an overburdened nervous system, sensitive nervous system, that's trying to fit into a box it doesn't fit in. So it's essentially like the fear, the overwhelm, like this is all an expression of your inner no. It's like, no, we're not here to fit in. And so we're here to be magical. And so by the time you've arrived here, you've probably been on some kind of healing journey, often around this burnout, and you're maybe starting to think, okay, I'm starting to shift things. And it might not be burnout that you're healing particularly, it might be something else that you're starting to heal, or you've had some kind of impact in your own life that's like, wow, this has made some huge transformation, and maybe I can now pass that on. Maybe I can help others. Maybe I've got this more meaningful purpose. Maybe I've got gifts that I don't quite yet know, like what they are or how to work with them. And then, of course, all the fear comes in. Well, oh my God, how am I gonna, I'm burned out. Like, and I've burned out before. Like, when I worked before and I had a career before, I burned out. And so we take this kind of projection of what happened before, because we were sensitive women, like living in a mundane life that didn't suit us, and we project that actually, even if we go and accept these gifts, this mission, this deeper soul purpose that we've been called into, like, what if that burns us out? And so all the fear starts to come in, and healers then think that fear, that burnout, or whatever else, is a sign that we shouldn't keep walking into our gifts. And that breaks my heart, because it's also something that I have journeyed with. And my mission on this earth is to let women know that that is not true. Burnout is just a call into more healing. And this time, not just personal healing, but healing of your inner wounded healer. Now, I work with archetypal remedies. For those of you who might be new listening to this, essentially these are remedies that we can activate within ourselves for self-healing. It's like I call it our inner archetypal apothecary. We each have one. We each have remedies that our soul has come here to journey within a lifetime for our healing. And I map those out for women in soul maps. They learn what their remedies are, and they're then able to navigate life, navigate healing, navigate the journey into becoming their healer. So that's like the foundation of what we're doing here. But ultimately, the archetype that we're talking about here with the wounded healer, which feels very significant actually with the new moon and eclipse that's just happened, which is very much around Chiron, which is also an archetype of the wounded healer. But the archetypal remedy of the wounded healer that I often talk about is archetypal phosphorus. Now, what archetypal phosphorus is, in essence, is an energetic remedy that has the energy of fire. It's the energy of this. Literally, phosphorus is a substance on the end of a match. So fire, obviously, as a symbol, a universal symbol, and these archetypes hold up mirrors for us to see aspects of ourselves that we've denied. You strike a match, it's deeply sensitive and it's going to ignite. You strike a match and it's in wounding, it's going to burn down to ash in a mundane life. However, if instead we learn to harness that flame, and okay, we're going to light the flame, we're going to light another torch, we're going to set a trail, set a blaze, another match or a torch. And we're going to have an abundance of this energy, this fire. then we're going to hold that torch. We'll have learned to conserve our energy. We'll have learned to embrace our deeper passion, our deeper meaning, to reclaim our energy, to reclaim our truth, to reclaim our souls, to heal ourselves. And as we do, as we heal all the different layers and return to who we were born as, which is archetypal phosphorus, this wounded healer, that's who we've come here in this lifetime to be as sensitive women, I believe. Like, we light that torch, and that becomes a flame for others to guide the way. So archetypal phosphorus tends to be the natural makeup, the natural constitution, who we were born as healers. It's not always the case. There might be other archetypal remedies that women are, but often they will be phosphorus. And constitutionally, that's who we're born as. She's typically like this beautifully sensitive, wide-eyed, curious little girl, life and soul of the party, very deeply sensitive, and over a lifetime she just has different layers of wounds. Like the wounded healer often has more wounds than anybody, because she's come here to heal them in order to inspire and help others and activate others and share her story to activate others. And so phosphorus burns out because she's the match. And yet, as she heals and reclaims her energy, her vitality, her life force, she can then she embraces her sensitivity, her magic, all of these different aspects of her. She then is able to hold that torch and share her light for others as a healer. And my whole journey has been one ongoing initiation to that. So that burnout, the reclamation of burnout, is like central to connecting back to who we are. Because phosphorus burns out. That's her wounding. That's her pattern. And that's her initiation into healing phosphorus. So and reclaiming her gold as this kind of healer, in essence. So my journey has been just one ongoing initiation into phosphorus. And of course, like I've healed so much of that. And of course, like I said, there's still always new depths that are being revealed to me. Because I also believe that whilst we learn how to heal ourselves and learn how to be in the ongoing process of healing, we also come here with specific wounds in this lifetime that we're here to journey this lifetime with and see more and more and more about. Like, I don't believe that we're ever fully healed. But we learn how to navigate these wounds, and that's where the healing is. So in essence, what I'd call unique soul remedy, and we all have our own unique soul remedy, but mine is phosphorus. So I'm constitutionally phosphorus, but my soul remedy is also phosphorus. And that means, that's quite unusual, that means that I'm here to help phosphoric women to learn to heal themselves and become healers. In essence, I'm here for that journey of reclaiming the wounded healer and becoming the healed healer and expressing our gifts in the world. And that's because like cures like. So I'm here talking to you, you're probably phosphorus, and you're in energetic resonance with this remedy. So you're here listening to my remedy. I'm serving this remedy through my words, through bringing her alive, through explaining all of this. I'm literally serving my story, which I'm going to share in a moment, will be activating medicine in you. So I consciously and intentionally harness this low potency in the podcast because there's not that deeper support. In my crucibles, in my journeys, they will be high potency. So just to share, like that's how this works. Like that is me being a remedy for you, and you learning how to self-heal yourself by being activated by my story. And so I am now obviously, maybe not obviously, if you're not listened before, I'm a soul guide to sensitive, secretly magical women who long to stop all the quick fix approaches and learn to heal themselves so they can become the healers, teachers, light workers, and guides that their soul was born to be. I can't remember if I've said there or you're in that, but essentially, I'm here to help women become healers by healing themselves and discover their gifts and express their deeper purpose. And that's because I am the remedy. I'm serving the remedy of phosphorus. You will have your own version of that, but for me, like, burnout is a big part of that phosphorus picture. And so women that I'm here to serve will likely have experienced burnout. And so my first initiation I say my first initiation, the first that I really remember, because it was quite traumatic, like began at the tender age of 10. And I call it initiation because that's what it feels like to me now. At the time, I would not have called that an initiation. I would have called it a trauma, or I mean, when I was 10, I probably wouldn't have called it anything, but it was like just an inconvenience or something quite, traumatic. But I now see it as an initiation, and I'll share why. Because it was something that led me into the path of reclaiming my deep, fiery sensitivity so that I could be the magical soul that I have come to be. And this, when I was 10, essentially, I was so sensitive. I'd always been sensitive, but I'd had a lot of trauma early on. I'd had my dad leave when I was 4, the first day that I started school, and also the same week we were meant to pick up my adopted sister from Romania, Mariana. And so I had kind of wrapped her up this red fluffy pencil case and like really feeling excited. I'd been to visit her, see her, meet her in Romania. And then all of a sudden, on the day that is already traumatic enough, like we are starting school, we're being like almost like ripped from the family. You can feel for a sensitive little soul. Like I look at my own little girl who's like 3, 4, she's coming up to 4 in August. And I think, God, like if I was like her and that sensitive, like how on earth did I even cope? And there's been a lot coming up for me recently, even more depths of that, seeing like how abandoned I felt in this trauma. And I can really see that that's where that soul rupture happened. It's like this, my soul just fragmented in the trauma that I experienced. So what happened was my dad left on the first day of school, and then my adopted sister never got to come. And of course, then the rest of the family were all in chaos, all in very big emotional like expression. And I was just this kind of sensitive little girl, just did not know what to do with that. And somewhere along the way, I picked up that this was my fault because I was sensitive. And my core phosphorus wound was activated. Again, abandonment is also a big part of the phosphorus picture. So this kind of like what I would say is I went into, even though it was constitutionally phosphorus, I went into a phosphoric wounded state, an archetypal phosphorus wounding state. These remedy states we go through in life that are part of our soul map will go into like a state that has kind of altered or fragmented that part of us that was just whole and pure. So I went into this wounding state and became exhausted because I had figured out that I had to do something to stop people from leaving, to stop bad things from happening. And so by the age of 10, like it took me from 4 to 10, so 6 years, and I'd had a lot of other things before I reached the point of burnout. Like I think I had pneumonia, I'd gone through some abuse, there was lots of different things, some grief, like there was a huge amount that went on. And eventually at the young age of 10, because I don't think I've ever heard of anybody else burning out at the age of 10, like this is normally something that we experience as adults. And so I got to a point where I literally couldn't walk. So I remember being pushed around, like my mum would sit me on her, she had an office chair and it had wheels on, and she would sit me on the wheel in this like office chair and be like pushing me around the house, trying to get me from one room to another. She essentially like just doted on me, like she had to give up everything and like devoted her life to me for a year, or because I wasn't able to go to school. I'd exhausted myself, and I was really, in essence, when I look back now, I see I'd exhausted myself from constantly trying to fit my sensitive self into the modern, mundane, overstimulating, busy, chaotic world that I didn't fit in. And I missed a whole year of school. And I did not see the gift in that for a long time. For a long time, like even until recently. Like, I mean, I saw that it then helped me to reclaim my sensitivity. But what I realised recently-ish, I mean, a few years ago, was that I felt like I'd missed out on this mundane world. Like, oh, poor Nicole, she missed a year of school, she missed her times tables. I mean, I literally have to add up on my fingers, which I think is also part of my neurodivergence. My brain doesn't work in the way that a lot of women's does, and that's the same for many sensitive women, by the way. But yeah, I missed a year of school. I missed kind of some of the grounding. I never had to kind of catch up because, again, like brilliance again goes with being sensitive often. Um, but I missed this whole year, and I was thinking, oh, poor me. Like, that must have been really traumatic. I missed out on this mundane world. And then I realised that what had happened in that year was I had the deepest, most magical possible ever initiation to magic. Because my mum, being the witch that she is, even though that's kind of unconscious, like she'll joke, she's like, oh yeah, I'm a witch. But she's actually a real witch, because what she did was, instead of, because the doctors were just like, oh, it's yuppie flu. They didn't know much about chronic fatigue at the time, and she just rejected that. She was like, no, this is not normal. And she took me to all the possible witchy healers she could. She took me to aromatherapist, to reflexology, to Reiki, to homeopathy, to all the things. Like, there was, like, I can't remember what they're called now, like impulse machines, like all sorts of like really like witchy things that I'd never really contemplated until I worked with the witch as an archetype. And I was like, oh, hang on a minute, because witchiness is just like normal to me at that point. And she took me to all of these witchy things. And homeopathy, which is what one of the three ancient wisdom bodies of my archetypal apothecary path, homeopathy was the thing that made the biggest change. And eventually, after going to a homeopath and having lots and lots and lots of homeopathy and working with the remedies, which is why, by the way, these are archetypal remedies that are in my path. They're kind of a combination of, I say, the three ancient wisdom bodies of homeopathy, archetypal psychology, and energy healing, because they're energy healing remedies. But that was my initiation into the witch. That was my initiation into these archetypal remedies. And I healed myself. That began the healing process for me and initiated me into the work that I do now. So that itself is a great example of how burnout literally can be a portal to connecting with our magic and gifts. And I suspect for many of you, if you have kind of landed here and you have experienced burnout, it'd be interesting to notice, like, where was your experience the same? Like, where did your burnout start to open you to this other world of magic that actually is who you really are? Because I looked back and I was like, oh, this was the biggest gift. I had a whole year. I mean, what child age 10 is like, oh, what a shame I didn't get to go to school? Like, what child age 10 gets to spend a year engrossed in magic? Like, that's just really unusual. And it's literally what's led me to being who I am today. And so for a long time, I spent my life trying to fix what felt broken. And I think that's the point here, is that when we experience burnout, we can feel broken. We can feel like there's something to fix, there's something to mend, and we can start to be tempted to outsource our healing to others, to doctors, to all sorts of other things, including often even healing therapies. And there's a caveat with that, because I often say we can interact with healing therapies and even energy remedies and even the archetypal apothecary in some ways if we come to it with the idea of like, okay, I'm going to go to somebody and they're going to fix me. I would say the initiation, the healing itself is like an activation or an initiation that starts the process. And it's up to us to then actually do the real work of self-healing through self-illumination, through working magically to see what the synchronicities, to see what's revealed after that initiation for us to work with consciously. And that's really what I call self-healing. It's like our soul is activated and we start to see what's being revealed about the patterns that we've held in our bodies, in our minds, until we're able to create healing, create change, choose differently. And so we have this sense of feeling broken. And then we typically try and quick fix, like go and give our power to someone else, like you fix me, you fix me, you fix me. And this is innocent as well, just to share. Like, this is a very masculinized and mundane way of viewing healing. My worldview on healing is very different. I wrote another post on that the other day. Like, my worldview on healing is very different to the mainstream world. Like, we have the capacity to heal ourselves. And it's kind of paradigm shifting. Like, people don't teach healing like I teach healing typically. And yet, and part of that is that these portals, these, what I said right at the beginning of the episode, like material for our liberation, these kind of healing responses that come up, these portals of things that seem really terrible, like burnout, are actually opportunities, and that takes a lot of power, sovereignty, to hold that way. So if you're like really triggered by that and you're like, no, that does not make any sense to me, who are you, what are you talking about, like, that is understandable and so welcome. Like, I'm loving you in that, because that would have been me as well back a few years ago. And yet these things are like deeply magical initiations for us to integrate, but we're not taught how to do that. And again, just to go back to my story, was after a while, even though I'd healed myself at this tender young age of 10, I kind of got back into the mundane world. I got almost like sucked back in very unconsciously. And at the age 24, burned out again. So I went back into this kind of career, did my degree, did my master's in business, went and got a career as a brand manager, because these patterns weren't being seen. I'd been interacting with these therapies in many ways as like quick fixes, even going to the doctors, like when I'm unable to walk again for the second time. I remember being carried to the bathroom, like at age 24, and the doctor said to me, "Are you sure you just don't want to work?" And I remember feeling so angry, because out of anybody, I was the person who'd worked the hardest. And people with burnout tend to be. They're the good girls who learned that they were going to be abandoned if they didn't do what everybody wanted. And so, yeah, so that was another portal. It's like our soul will keep showing us what we need to heal. I went through the burnout portal once, I learned a lesson, and then I blindly ignored it and went back in. And so, bam, I'm hit with burnout again. It's like, okay, there's something here. And I remember at the time thinking to myself, okay, well, homeopathy healed me last time. And I always get emotional talking about this, because I'm like, well, the one day I just, because I'd been learning about devotion and feminine devotion, and I was like, what's the one thing that I'm devoted to? And this is really how Archetypal Apothecary was born, because I realised that all those years ago when I got ill that second time and my soul got fragmented again, I had said to myself, homeopathy healed me last time. I don't know if that's going to work again. But right now, like, there's nothing else. Like, that's all I have. So I'm gonna go try homeopathy again. If that heals me again, I'm gonna devote my life to it. The power. Oh, I feel so emotional. The power of those words has meant that all these years later, I'm gonna calculate how many years it is. Failed. I don't know. It's over a decade. Like, the power of those words has created my gift, like my portal, in that desperate moment where I said, I will do anything to be healed. Like, I don't see this as possible. I don't see that I can heal burnout, even though that's happened once before. Like, that must have been a fluke. Magic, it can't be real. Like, it can't have just magically healed me. If this magic heals me again, I am going to devote my life to it. And guess what? It healed me again. And so I kept my promise and I went and trained as a homeopath. And that is really how these portals, burnout, whatever it is, it could be other portals. These portals of what feel like something that is awful connect us to our magic, connect us to our gifts. And so I went and trained as a homeopath, and obviously fast forward to now, homeopathy is like the deepest truth to me. Is like the deepest symbol of magic, and we're working in the modality of archetypal apothecary with these remedies from homeopathy, but as not in the traditional way that homeopathy is dosed. So that's traditionally homeopathy is dosed through served through like little pills, little sugar pills, but they're energy remedies. Like what you're putting onto the sugar pills is an energetic medicine. So I'm like, okay, let's do away with the sugar pills. We don't need the sugar pills because my medicine is to speak these remedies and they activate. I started to see as I was working with women, oh my goodness, like they are responding as if I've given them a remedy just by me speaking it. And then I started to see that they could learn to work with the remedies themselves as archetypes. And so archetypal apothecary was born. But without burnout, without that journey, we wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be recording this episode. I wouldn't be in that magic and gifts. Like, this is my deepest purpose. And it was found in the portal of burnout. And so, going back to age 24, I healed that. I trained as a homeopath, and then later on started to piece together this archetypal piece. I went on this journey of feminine soul healing, learned to heal myself, learned to reclaim my soul. And it taught me really, like deepened me, let's say, into the integration of magical healing. By going into the body, by learning to welcome all, by learning to use these archetypal remedies as like mirrors for aspects of our soul that have been shamed, pushed into the darkness, rejected. And part of that was learning to reclaim my deep sensitivity, to learn to fully like really heal this burnout. And like particularly like we talk about 4 remedies that I serve in the path is archetypal Rosa, archetypal Aurum, which is gold, archetypal She-Wolf, and archetypal Luna. And these are all symbols of the different phases of the feminine. So we've got Maiden, Lover, Mother, Crone. And these I see are so important for women who are here to be healers, particularly those who have experienced burnout, like reclaiming these things. We're really talking about our sensitivity, our soft power, our wildness, our magic, like reclaiming those things are so important in the journey of healing ourselves and also becoming healers. And burnout often is the portal to that. And so I think you can kind of get a clear sense now of how burnout can be a portal to connecting with our magic and gifts. And your own journey with that will be different to mine, but it is in essence part of the wounded healer that calls you down into the healer. And in that process, I was then able to birth my modality, my deepest soul purpose. And I also found along the way that the more fully I expressed my soul purpose, the more fully I expressed who I was, who I am, the more energy I reclaimed. And James Tyler Kent, who's a famous homeopath, said a famous quote that I love to quote because it feels so potent. He said, "There is no cell or tissue so small that it does not keep its soul and life force in it." And to me, it's like everywhere that we have lost energy or we have symptoms or sensations, like that's just a reminder that our soul and our life force is wanting to be reclaimed. Like that's really what burnout is calling us back to, the reclamation of our soul, our truth, who we are. And our souls will choose to experience burnout in order for us to have that conscious awakening. Because without it, we're just living life asleep. And so it is that kind of initiation into reclaiming our sensitive, magical souls, our purpose as healers, lightworkers, teachers, guides. And of course, that comes with fear. That comes with the fears, there's three common fears that often, that I say healers come with, and that's like control. What if I fail? Approval. What if people judge me? Security. What if I can't support myself? There are lots of different fears, but fear itself will also burn us out. And there's this sense of like, I can't be a healer if I'm burned out. I can't be a healer if I feel fear. And my whole message is that that's not true. We're just being called into deeper healing of this phosphorus wounded healer. Not by quick fixes, but by loving ourselves home, by learning to love the lost, fragmented parts of our souls. Just like for me, that was that sensitivity. The part of me that felt like I had to keep pushing through and do everything in order to be loved. Like there's lots of different parts of me that I've talked about that were fragmented, that I reclaimed. But burnout is a deeper call into the healer journey. It's calling us to reclaim the lost part of our soul that came here to be a sensitive healer. And yeah, I'm gonna complete there because it feels like a gorgeous place to end. But in essence, I would invite you in closing to just contemplate, like, what has your own burnout revealed to you? Where are you at with your burnout journey? Are you perhaps in the wounding of this kind of like either pushing, forcing, hustling, trying to get everything done? Or perhaps are you avoiding doing anything because you're fearing burning out again? Burnout ultimately in any of our wounds are here to reveal something to us. They're here to reveal old patterns and to reveal what gifts are there to be reclaimed in them. So those questions are a really helpful starting point. And if you want to go deeper, of course, you're very welcome to either, have a look at our page, see what's going on at the moment. So we have group journeys, we have our Secret Witch Sisterhood, which is just a gorgeous place to gather. We have our free monthly new moon gathering, which is also, it's like a party for secret witches. So you're welcome to join that if you're looking for a tender next step. But I'd also love to hear what came up for you in this episode. Like, I always love to hear from women in terms of like what they've actually learned from this, what they've taken away from this. There were so many gorgeous gems of just comments about the Secret Witch show recently. I shared something in our Secret Witch Society that was saying like who listens to the show and what do you love, and the same for who loves our community and what do you receive from it. And it was just so gorgeous because what came up was like this sense of like just this group of like-minded women who are here like together to love and support each other, a place to grow where we feel safe, like share the same values, find our power, find our truth. Like people were saying like, I love the podcast because it's like I'm like sitting there listening going whoop whoop and just like deeply resonating. So it's really like a community full of like-minded, sensitive, magical souls. Again, like I'm just reading through some of the comments now as I'm sharing. It's like feel safe, feel heard, can fully express. Like it's a reminder to refocus when I drift off. I can just dip in and out, and I listen again, loving the podcast, like supportive, safe space, like safety, connection, understanding, wisdom, empowerment. Like what a glorious description for what we've created in there. And it is really a co-creation. So if you want to be part of that co-creation, you're very, very welcome to join us. And I would love to hear what this episode has brought alive for you. So I'm going to stop there and I'm going to wrap you in love if you're experiencing burnout. And please do reach out if you've got any questions. Lots of love. I would really love to hear what your takeaways were from that episode, but here are my key takeaways. Many women who are here to be healers will experience burnout because we tend to be sensitive souls who don't fit into a mundane world. We can often think that being burned out is a sign to give up on our calling to be a healer, We will often shame ourselves for not fitting into the cultural expectations to do more, be more, and push and force, leaving us feel not enough and wondering why we can't keep up like other people. My radical point of view is instead that this really is just a call from our body to go into deeper self-healing, deeper inquiry and illumination about what wants to be revealed by our symptoms, and especially around the reclamation of our wounded healer. If we can drop the shame we feel about being sensitive and burned out, we can begin to open to what it's really revealing, our true gifts as sensitive, magical healers. And if we learn how to open to that and stop trying to fix ourselves because we feel broken, we can learn how to reclaim the gifts in our portals of burnout, both healing our burnout and particularly reclaiming our wounds around sensitivity. When we learn how to do that, we can become the lighthouse for others who also have wounds like ours. If you'd like to get the show notes and links for everything we've chatted about in this episode, head to www.secretwitch.co.uk. If you know a secret witch who would love this episode, please share with them to help them liberate themselves. And so you don't miss out on next week's episode, head to your podcast app of choice and hit subscribe. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.